Ladies, gentlemen, and others, welcome back to Boz Comics. I want to apologize to you all for my absence. I did a couple of halfway decent videos, and then I kind of dropped off the face of the planet. Um, it is a long, tragic tale involving more sick cats, um, mounting pressures of the human condition, and really just a very incompatible schedule with my wife. But we've come out the other side of that dark and dreary tunnel, and here I am, and I now find myself with renewed vigor in regards to working on this channel again. So, to all four of you who are as of yet subscribed, welcome back. So today I want to talk to you all about something that has bugged me for quite a while, but I haven't really seen anyone else bring it up. And that is my lamentation of the loss of the secret identity. Now, everyone has seen the start of the MCU, which was, Iron Man starring Robert Downey Jr. Now, Iron Man, I feel, was the arguably, if not the very best of the MCU films, it was definitely top three of a very, of a very small stable of great movies. Iron Man, I think, is definitely my absolute favorite of the MCU films. But the reason I bring up the Iron Man film is I think the MCU is in large part responsible for the dearth of secret identities in comics this day and age. Which is funny, because Iron Man revealed his secret identity in the 90s, I want to say. I don't know. For those of you who are uninitiated, that crack at the end of the Iron Man film, where, originally S.H.I.E.L.D. is telling Tony Stark to say that the Golden Avenger was his bodyguard in a suit, that was actually Tony's line. That was his whole deal back in the day. That's how he would keep his identity as Iron Man secret back in the days. He would claim, "Oh, that's a Stark employee in a high-tech suit that I built. It's not me." Which, really, I will admit, that in retrospect feels more like we got to give this guy a secret identity, because we, all our heroes, for the most part anyway, have secret identities, in the 60s, 70s, and on. Up until at least the 90s, everyone had secret identities. So even Thor, this will shock some of you, but even Thor had a secret identity up until, I believe, the 80s, whenever Walt Simonson took over Thor, because I think he's the one that got rid of the Donald Blake persona. But yeah, that's a nice little Easter egg, where Tony at the end of the Iron Man film says, "That's ridiculous," and says, "I am Iron Man." And even though the precedent had already been set for Iron Man being out with his secret identity, I think it's the film being, of course, more mainstream, the birthplace of the MCU. I think that's really what killed secret identities, right? Because if you look at the MCU, everyone's identity is public, with the exception of Spider-Man. And spoilers for Far From Home in 3, 2, 1. You notice how at the end of that shit show they got rid of Spider-Man's secret identity right fucking quick? I had a very strong feeling they were going to do that, which was one of the many reasons I had misgivings about that film. I have not, by the way, I still have not seen that film. I just took in the plot spoilers, the play-by-play. I've watched a ton of the spoiler reviews. I know everything of plot significance that happens in that film, and I've decided it is absolutely not for me. It sounds exactly like the fucking train wreck I predicted it would be. So, but anyway, secret identities. I feel as though, I don't know specifically that it was the MCU that, put the 45 caliber hollow point through the concept of the modern secret identity. But I have a feeling, it's just a gut feeling, that it's really the MCU that did it in. And I think it sucks. I miss Secret Identities. Um, in order to explain why, um, I think I've talked about this in previous videos. It may have been in one of the videos that I started recording and then didn't upload because of computer problems. That was the other big factor as to why I haven't been on this channel in a while. I had some serious computer issues and it took fucking forever to get it fixed. But anyway, my first exposure to comic books was Spider-Man, specifically the 90s Spider-Man cartoon. And then, you know, I kind of had mentioned to my cousin how much I loved the cartoon. I loved Spider-Man. I was like 5, I think, somewhere between 5 and 8. And cousin Katie was a straight up G and took me to a comic book shop. Comic book shops were still pretty fucking prevalent back in the day. I know, what a concept, right? You could still find them in most major cities, it felt like, just not mine at the time. So we went to a comic book shop, and I remember I wanted comics like involving the black costume. 5-year-old me wanted comics involving the black costume. And I remember she picked me out this comic that was I remember the cover vividly to this day, right? I think this was the first comic book I ever owned that wasn't an adaptation of the cartoon. Because my dad would bring me home some of those kid-friendly comics or some of those, like, Spider-Man magazines. Spider-Man used to have his own magazine back in the day. It was epic. I wish I had those. They'd probably be worth a fortune now. But this was, I believe, I could be way wrong, but I believe this was my first quote-unquote real comic book. My first mainstream Spider-Man comic. My first mainstream comic, period. I still remember the cover to this day. It was The Amazing Spider-Man. It had Doc Ock, like, holding up Spider-Man's limp body kind of triumphantly. Spider-Man's in the black costume. And Doc Ock is grinning like a maniac, and he says something to the effect of, Spider-Man, you know, you may have won in our previous battles, but today, Dr. Octopus wins. And I was like, what the fuck is this? 5-year-old me did not talk that way. But the general sentiment remains. I was floored. I was like, what is happening here? And I really I needed that comic book. So that's what happened. We jumped on that. And I am forever grateful. That book was incredible. That book showcased Spider-Man. Sorry, I hit some crap on my stand here. That book showcased Spider-Man having a fight with Dr. Octopus. I believe Doc Ock was trying to, like, overload a reactor or some shit. I think maybe he was, like, ransoming the world, or maybe he was, like, trying to get revenge on the world. Who fucking knows? He's Doc Ock. He's crazy. He's annoying. And he's Dan Slott's favorite character, which just gives me more reason to fucking hate him. I know I just played the pronoun game. I was talking about Doc Ock, but I suppose it goes both ways. It could have meant Doc Ock. It could have meant Dan Slott. Doesn't matter. Fuck that man. Anyway, so Doc Ock, you know, at this point in continuity, have this weird mental break where if he sees Spider-Man, he thinks of all the time Spider-Man has whipped his fucking ass, and he goes comatose. So, like, the fight's, like, pretty much over before it begins. So now, though, Spider-Man shows up to stop Doc Ock, and the arms are out of control. The arms start moving autonomously, and they just start attacking Spider-Man. But for whatever reason, Spidey becomes convinced that he needs Doc Ock to help him shut the reactor down. I don't remember the context as to why. I haven't read the issue in years. But Spider-Man's like, shit, I can't stop this myself. I can't save the day on my own. I need to be able to convince Doc Ock to undo what he's done. So he sacrifices his dignity. He ignores his spider sense, lets Doc's arms start beating the shit out of him, and his sacrifice of his dignity, him allowing himself to be trounced, knocks Doc Ock out of his stupor. And Doc Ock comes out all megalomaniacal, and he's like, I'm beating Spider-Man. And Doc Ock overcomes his phobia, which is kind of a real sacrifice for Spider-Man, honestly. He overcomes his phobia, and Spider-Man, who is now beaten within an inch of his life because he's allowed himself to be whipped by these arms, he says, okay, Doc, you've won, but you don't want to kill all your witnesses, do you? And Doc Ock, fucking narcissist that he is, he's like, oh, of course not, silly me, and he shuts the reactor down. And Spider-Man says to him, all right, Doc, I guess this is it, time for the kill, huh? And Doc Ock says, what? No. Oh, God, no. I've just completely annihilated you. I need to let you live with the shame. Which is 18 different kinds of stupid, but it is totally in line with Doc Ock's arrogant personality. So, the end of the issue, Spider-Man limps home. He kind of lost, but still won. Or did he win, but still lose? I don't know. But he limps home, and he has into his shitty apartment, strips down to the waist. He's just Peter Parker in Spider-Man pants. And he has this moment. Now, I was 5 reading this. This left a profound effect on me. Okay? Peter says something to the effect of this is back when characters had thought balloons. And he's thinking to himself, and he says, wow, I should be flipping out, punching walls right now, but I know I did the right thing. Uncle Ben would be proud of me. I think I just became an adult. Wow, such great writing, right? And that was really the issue. That first mainstream issue, made me truly love Peter Parker the man, because it was something it was so groundbreaking for me as a little tyke to see this hero make this ultimate sacrifice, and then have to come home to this shitty apartment and just kind of ruminate on his adventure. And acknowledge that he had to make some personal sacrifice to do what had to be done, to be the hero, to save the day, to save countless lives. You got to see him in this vulnerable state. He wasn't some colorful character, larger than life. He was a dude. He was younger than I am now. And he's just a dude. And he's just sitting, in his apartment. And he's kind of, he learns a life lesson. And it felt real. It felt earned. It felt genuine. And we got to see this man being vulnerable, right? I'm going to keep harping on the Spider-Man angle, right? Because it's so perfect, right? How many times did we see Spider-Man have to choose between his heroic duties, his self-imposed responsibilities as Spider-Man, although he would argue they're inherent, but that's a whole other thing. His responsibilities as Spider-Man and fostering a healthy, happy social life, right? I mean, that's a conflict at the core of Spider-Man. It always has been. That has always been really integral to the character. That's all taken out of the movies, and I know for a fact that I've discussed that in my video about why I couldn't get hyped for Far From Home, and I was totally right to have my issues. It seems. But, his secret identity is inherent to the conflict that makes the issue so relevant, right? You look at Iron Man, you look at Captain America, you look at even fucking Black Widow, Hawkeye. Okay, Hawkeye is the closest one to a normie in that whole group, right? But he's still kind of a known quantity. Yeah, he's the most D-list out of all of them, right? But there are people out there who know who Hawkeye is. There are people out there who's in this setting whose favorite Avenger is Hawkeye, and they know that Hawkeye is Clint Barton. They know his face. It's not a secret. Dude goes anywhere outside of that small little farmstead he owned, and he people are going to recognize him and want his autograph, okay? Tony Stark, everyone knows who Tony Stark is, you know? Fucking Steve Rogers, he's a literal American hero. Everyone knows who Captain America is. Captain America is a cultural icon. For God's sake, by the end of Endgame, I always get Endgame and Infinity War mixed up. By the end of Endgame, even the Hulk in the Avengers movie is this amalgamation of Hulk and Bruce Banner and beloved by all, and all the terrible things he's done in the past have been forgiven. That was a horrible misstep on so many levels. Fuck that move. That was awful. But all semblance of separation between the human element of these characters and their larger than life selves, it's all been like kicked to shit, put away in the corner where we're not gonna like talk about it, acknowledge it. Part of the fantasy that I loved most about the idea of the superhero was the secret identity. I grew up wishing, I have a mild case of cerebral palsy. I grew up a total nerd, which is one of the main reasons I identified so hard with Peter Parker, right? I felt bullied. I felt ostracized. I felt like nobody noticed me. Nobody heard me. Nobody understood me. I felt ugly. I felt unloved and unwanted. At like 8, these were feelings that I was struggling with, and I struggled with them up until my 20s. Okay? So now my self-esteem is much better, but it took a long time to get there. But like my fantasy was, this is who I appear to be. But what if I could shed this persona? I could have this glorious secret. I could be this hero zipping around through the air, saving lives. Right? That was awesome. I only pretend to be this weak, unloved, friendless geek. I am actually a superhero. I used to write fan fiction about Spider-Man with myself in the place of Peter Parker. Oh man, to be young again. I am actually writing a Spider-Man fanfic right now that you can read, which is kind of like my reinterpretation of Spider-Man as a whole, kind of like my take on an ultimate universe. I've only written the first chapter so far, and I really got to pick that back up again. I thought I left fan fiction behind a long time ago, but I guess not. I think I've just Nick Spencer's current run notwithstanding, which by and large is excellent. I think I'm just so burned by all the choices that have been made about my favorite superhero. I was like, fuck it. I channeled my inner Thanos and I was like, fuck it, I'll do it myself. But anyway, the secret identity being jettisoned from the core mythos of the superhero is a huge mistake, because those easily recognizable human elements are what keep them grounded. They're what connects these heroes to the rest of us. It's what makes it so easy for us to see ourselves in them. As it stands, if you look at Iron Man, like take away, it's a fucking meme, right? Take away that suit of armor. What are you? And what does he say? Like, handsome, billionaire, playboy philanthropist. Oh God, Tony Stark's life is so hard because dead parents and alcoholism. Yeah, okay. Yeah, sure. Everyone believes that. Like, come on. These are the poster children for the Marvel Universe now. I keep harping on the movies because, let's face it, the comics have just become advertisements for the movies. Advertisements that nobody fucking reads anyway because the comic industry is dying, no matter what anyone else wants to say. The secret identity is, I think, a large part of the magic, because it made that clear delineation, right? It showed us that, yes, these were men and women who could do incredible things and would do incredible things in the service of others. But at the end of the day, the mask comes down, the armor comes off. We the mystical hammer disguises itself as a walking stick again, and they're back to being one of us, right? And it fed into that idea that any one of us could be a hero, right? I mean, God, the whole idea of the Green Lantern back in the day was that anybody, if they were worthy, could be chosen to wear a ring someday, right? There's a good a Green Lantern comic, Secret Origins, where Guy Gardner basically gives like a crash course in the history of the Green Lanterns, and it's actually the comic that made me a Green Lantern fan to a point. And all through that origin story, Guy Gardner keeps saying like right place, right time. That's all it takes to be a Green Lantern. Right place, right time. God, that was so incredible. Just this idea. Like, and I knew it was fantasy, but what if, right? What if? What if? What if some little blue alien, right? Like kind of stepped out of a pocket dimension and went, Baz, you have been chosen as the Green Lantern of Sector 2814. You have the ability to overcome great fear. Although at the time, it wasn't overcome great fear. It was still, having no fear. This is before Disney. This is before DC realized that was kind of dumb. But I digress. This is before one of the better retcons. That kind of shit was just, God, it was so good. I loved it so much. DC did this new age of heroes thing, right? It was an attempt to like spinning out of Dark Knight's metal. They're like, we're gonna create a whole slew of new characters, right? We're gonna try to bring in this whole new suite of original characters. I think most of them were gonna be minorities, okay? But that's fine because they're original characters and they were really well written. And from what I remember, most of them, their whole story was not, look at me, I'm a minority and I'm so oppressed. It was, these were fleshed out characters with real problems. And it was, I just hit the mic. Oh, God, excuse me. These were fleshed out characters with real problems. And it was just great. It harkened back to the better days of comic books where there was real human drama in the mix. We just don't have that anymore because now the superhero has no secret identity. He has no personal life. He's just a rock star, and they're all the same. They're just these beautiful people in gaudy costumes that increasingly look less and less like gaudy costumes and more just like either military uniforms or regular clothes, right? And they just go out and they do hero shit, and everybody loves them. There's no grounded element. There's nothing that connects them to you and I. I mean, sure, you can aspire to be them, but you can't really see yourself. You can't believe that you are them anymore. Kids, I feel, will never know what it's like to imagine you have that secret persona, to imagine that even though other people can't recognize it right now, like you can be more than you are. I guess there are different ways to get to that place, right? But the secret identity was just such a magical thing, and I really miss it. Anyway, thanks for listening to this ramble. I hope you enjoyed it. I'm considering switching to a scripted format for future videos, which I'm sure some of you will appreciate. But for now, I kind of like the idea of just being able to come off the cuff and share my thoughts, but we'll see. Please like, subscribe, show your appreciation in some small way. It really helps. Hit the bell for notifications because YouTube has become a cesspool that really does not like to promote smaller creators at all. Especially since I like to swear in my videos, and damn it, I will not give that up for anyone. Fuck off. Anyway, thanks guys. You're awesome. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.